All right, everybody, that's us. I think hopefully we're on now and you can hear us.
Good evening, everybody.
So I think we're good. Well, I don't get a lot of audio feedback here, so we're going to assume that we're doing okay. All right, well, good evening. It's first day in March, and that's us.
There we go.
Okay, just want to make sure. Okay, perfect. All right, and so here we go.
Paul decided to change things again, and
I'm using a new computer, so I'm trying to do something a little bit different, and it's been a little bit of a challenge, as always. But I'll get into the little spot here. All right, so welcome to the Wednesday, March 1st, and we really the last meeting that we're going to cover a little bit is pretty much we touched on a little bit last week, but we want to get into a few things. Maybe be a little bit more salient as far as the points go, and discuss a few things specifically from that meeting. So I'll put up the meeting again just to kind of remind people what happened. That particular meeting was about the resignations mostly, unfortunately.
Yeah.
We kind of went over these already. You want to get it?
this meeting lasted all of 12 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's mostly about the resignations.
Right. Move back a little bit so you can see. All right. And so he's cutting me out, taking on my thunder. So the resignations, I think we touched on again last week. Mr. Pfeiffer from the building committee.
Yeah.
And then we had Teresa from the building committee as well. And then the last one was Mr. Kincaid from the
treasurer collector.
From the treasurer collector's office.
And what cracks me up about that is they did make the motions and accept. You know, they voted to approve the resignations.
Right.
I would love to see what happens if they
decide not to accept it.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, so
luckily,
I think we mentioned this before. Luckily, we really didn't have that many resignations that kind of put us over a barrel.
Right.
Which is great. We had a lot of most of what we did during this segment was appointments, and so
I don't really understand how you take a vote on a resignation. I just never really got that. I mean, I do think that you should say, hey, we got this resignation. Now there's a big hole. We have to ask for people to kind of maybe step up and fill up, send in their resumes, maybe apply for it or whatnot. I think that would be a logical discussion at these meetings. But to vote to accept the resignation, to me, makes no sense. You get are you going to vote against it? What if somebody said no? Are they going to give the resignation back and say, no, we're not going to accept your resignation? I don't get it. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So that's just a pet peeve of mine. It was, I just don't understand it. I just don't understand it. It just doesn't make sense.
No, and it's one of those, you know, I want to say there's something, is it the military that you can, that your commanding officer can say, no, you know, you can't leave this unit?
I don't know.
I'm assuming there's something.
I'm assuming there's probably somewhere that happens. But anyhow, again, that's just a pet peeve. I just didn't really understand it. If anybody's had the chance, you can look on Facebook as well as Mass Live. There is an article that, again, kind of went into a little bit of what happened as far as the resignation of the treasurer collector. Within limits, I think it really kind of, the meat of it was pretty much what we already knew, what was gained from the watching the FinCom meeting, and what was gained from, well, what little there was at the select board meeting. Yeah. So there wasn't much there. But then there was an executive session after that, and we don't know, obviously nobody knows what went on with that. So hopefully they'll release those minutes sooner rather than later, because we would like to have them. I think it's a good idea to have them out there, you know, just to kind of explain what all happened. From our perspective, we kind of touched on it last week. It looks as if there was cutting down of hours and splitting hours between the treasurer collector and the assistant treasurer collector. Then they kind of combined their hours, divvied the hours so that they could get more done in a week.
Right, and they wanted in Wales they are the treasurer and the collector.
Right.
And they wanted to go back to that which is against what town meeting voted on, and
Right,
you know, so, but, you know, we let them, and I think, you know, Paul and I did all we could to ensure that if one were to leave, if Rod were to leave,
Right.
you know, they should be able to, you know, and you hate to do it, decrease Becky's, the assistant's pay, because that's, you know, she's getting paid much more than the assistant should.
Right. Yeah, there were a couple of things to try to appease the needs of the town and the needs of the individuals that were appointed to those positions. So, but what ended up happening was not quite the same as what was explained was going to happen. And I think instead of cutting back the hours were actually stayed the same.
Right.
You know, and so you can't combine the money, divvy up the hours, then keep the old number of hours.
Right. Say to your overseeing board, which is a select board, that I'm cutting my hours down.
Right.
And then go in front of FinCom and say I'm cutting my hours down.
Right.
And then I don't know, I don't remember if that was relayed during town meeting, but if anybody asked, that was what was happening, because that was what was agreed to.
I think.
I don't know if
I thought
anybody
that happened
asked.
before. Was that before town meeting that they did?
Well, no, I mean, so when the last budget season happened, you know,
when Paul and I were still on board,
right?
They were discussing how they wanted to do all this, and then it had to go in front of town meeting to get the approval for. I mean, that salary line item went up by 15-20% at least, and you know, we all defended it, and FinCom defended it,
right?
Because we had that conversation at our meetings, and you know, and then the implementation of it, like we said in the Facebook post, you know, every time that the select board meets,
if you watch, and they don't. I guess I'm not there early enough. I usually walk in a little late. But, you know, we would spend the first 10 minutes handing papers down to each other.
Right.
And when it was your turn to look at the paperwork, it kind of stunk, because you missed some of what was going on in the meeting, because, you know, I was reviewing every piece of paper to make sure that, okay, this was an Amazon purchase that was for paper products.
Right.
You know, by the senior center, that makes sense that they might have paper product needs, you know, and do the best to make sure that it was that it was all checked.
Right.
You also looked at every timesheet, and it was much easier when it was an employee. You know, and when the police department packet came in, you know, with all the officers, you know, it was signed off by the chief, and I think the lieutenant.
Right.
So I didn't have to spend a whole lot of time doing that, because I didn't know.
Right.
But when you looked at the chief's timesheet, I looked at that.
Right.
Because he's my direct report that I had to make sure, you know, wasn't doing anything silly.
You should be able to depend on the section heads as being department heads, as being the overseers of their people.
Right.
Well enough to trust them, so that you don't need to know that, you know, John S. did this, or Susan S. did this, or whatever. I mean, you just didn't have to be that particular, but you just needed to kind of get an eyeball on it, that it was happening. What's that?
So Michelle's saying that when we switched to a different angle, it echoes.
Yeah, I just took that. There was an extra microphone on there. When I went to the other angle, it had a microphone on it. I just found that out. So it should go away.
Yeah, she says it's better.
All right.
Yeah. He needs better glasses.
No, I did it before I took my glasses off. I'm getting a headache just working next to you. It's tough. It's tough. That's the echo.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So, anyhow, so you go through the warrant and you kind of make sure things are copacetic. And the reality was, there must have been hours coming through from the Treasury line item that should have been a red flag. It should have been a red flag somewhere. You get the other thing that we used to get is the appropriations summary from the accountant. And you just looked at that and you could see, okay, we're, halfway through the year.
What is the appropriation sheet, Paul?
All right. So basically it's a line item ongoing, up to date. What did you spend? Here's your line item. This is what the town meeting gave you. This is what you've spent year to date. And then you could kind of extrapolate how much time was left in the year, and based on the line item, where you're going to spend it or not. Payroll, one would think that halfway through the year you spent half, the other half, it should kind of be self-explanatory. Yeah. Other things, and we could probably talk about a little bit, let's just talk about snow removal, all right? Just because it was up on the agenda. Snow removal is one of those things that you can't really predict. And so the line item almost always is a roundabout, and then it goes over at some point during the winter, depending on what exactly kind of winter we've had. So you can look at that, and it doesn't always make sense, but it should be a red flag. I mean, you should say, okay, well, we're over. By the end of February, we're usually a little bit over. And so that we can deal with. But with payroll and with line item things that come out of the annual town meeting, that's a set number of dollars. And if you say, okay, the police can't go out and say, all right, I want to buy all those new radios that he wanted that one year. I want to buy all those new radios. Well, you can't. Your line item says that you've got $900 left, and each one of them's $1,800. You're going to have to go to town meeting and ask for it, or go to FinCom and get ready to ask for it. And so you should have an awareness. So that's the appropriation sheet, is basically, it's an update on your budget, at least as close to, time to date.
Right. Yeah, and I would always look at it, and with all the salaries, I wouldn't know exactly what it was, but you could look down and see, 3 or 4 line items of salaries. If 3 of them say 54% of the is burned up, and one says 60, that there's a problem there. It's you're probably 54% of the way through the year.
And usually all you got to do is say, depending on what department it is, ask the department head, or just say, hey, Marie, what's going on here? And they'll say, oh, okay, well, this is because of X and Y, and it's all going to be fine because this is what we had to do. And as long as it makes sense, then it's all good. This should have been a red flag on an appropriation sheet when they were looking at it. Right. And it started in, I don't know when, December is when they started seeing a worry.
No, it was every payroll he was asking.
Yeah, but I mean, I think when so what would happen on your sheet is you may be spending more of your percentage, but your line item still had value, right? You know what I mean? So, and by November, December, it was obvious it wasn't going to last until the fiscal year was over. And I think that's about when everybody started kind of scratching their heads. Certainly that's when FinCom, I think, became...
I'm pretty sure that that everyone was notified. I forget if it was October or August.
So even before.
Oh yeah.
Well before.
Yeah, and it was the first time that I think he said that at the October meeting, FinCom was alerted to it, and they didn't take it up, and so. But it's really not FinCom's to do. FinCom FinCom is there to make sure that the budgets are looking good for next year.
Right.
And they also do reserve fund transfers throughout the year.
Right. And it's not FinCom's job to make your budget work.
Right.
It is FinCom's job to predict the future, deal with any unforeseen circumstances.
Yeah. And it's not even predicting the future, it's managing the future, planning the future.
Planning for. And so, and they clearly, I mean, again, I would advise everybody to go watch that meeting, because I thought it was a very elucidating meeting. There was a lot going on there. You could really, there's a lot, you have to listen to it, maybe even listen to it a couple times to kind of get the gist of it. Yeah. But what FinCom's position, they were put in a position because they were requesting Treasury Department, Treasury Collector's Office, whatever, or they were requesting a money transfer to their line item for payroll. And because of the way it was requested, and because of their knowledge of what was happening, FinCom legally couldn't do it. They basically said, you cannot request a transfer and have a transfer done to offset a deficit that you foresaw coming. And so they were put between a rock and a hard place because nobody wants to go on. They don't really have a good solution to it, but they were also asked to kind of do something that was a little bit sketch. Now, once that happened, I don't know. I mean, I don't know where the discussions went. It did not end well that night. I know that.
Right.
And so then there was a short meeting, executive session meeting, I guess. Afterwards, and I don't know.
The other thing that came out both in the article as well as during that FinCom meeting that really annoyed me was, and you know, it's happened in the past with this treasurer collector, is, you know, he likes to blame people, and he likes to say how much better his department was running from how it ran in the past. You know,
yes.
and I guess the term used, I think, in the article was the other previous administration let things slip.
Right.
And I will tell you right now that nothing slipped in those, you know, from previous treasurer collectors. Those people worked their hearts out.
Right.
You know, and they may not have gotten the full breadth of things. They may not have been able to get into the, you know, and I don't know if this is true, but he says it a lot with the tax title. You know, he's doing a lot more tax title. His office is doing a lot more tax title.
Right.
Well, he now has 2 full-time employees or
right.
close to full-time plus a clerk.
Right.
You know, back 4 years ago, we had 1 treasurer collector.
Right.
And that was it. And then she got a 16-hour week help, and then that got bumped up over time. But, you know, that department has seen a huge amount of growth.
Right.
Less open hours to the public.
Yes.
And, you know, if they're getting more done through tax title, good for them.
Right. Well, we also have to, the increase in tax title and basically getting that money was also on the opposite side of COVID. And the reality was nobody was going after people's
right
homes. Nobody wanted to take liens or go after tax title and put people against the wall while they were trying to stay healthy. And quite honestly, I thought that, oh yeah, you know, we've gotten all this now. Well, you know what? Yeah, because they've been bubbling.
Yeah.
You know, they've been percolating over here.
That's a great point.
And they hadn't really, they weren't going to do it. This is the value of being in a small town where people kind of know everybody and you have a little bit of an understanding. And I think that's what they had to work with. And so, again, I'm not obviating the good things of going after the tax liens. I get it, but I think it's a little bit, again, disingenuous to say they let all this stuff go. It's the same thing with the insurance. There was a big health insurance thing where they kind of say, oh, we were paying this health insurance for a while. Well, the reality is there was a teacher who left the employment of the elementary school and wrote numerous letters to say, hey, take me off, I'm off, and literally had to keep on telling them to take her off. Now, I don't know whose fault it was, but it happened.
Right.
And so to take kudos for finding that money, or undoing that is also a little bit specious in my mind. I didn't. Anyways.
And I guess to wrap this up.
Yep.
You know, it is very unfortunate that this happened.
This is not good.
He was, he wasn't certified, and if you go back to when he got hired, you'll see to some of those meetings, you'll see Paul and I talking about different things that, not that we knew back then what was happening, not that,
No, nobody could have foreseen this. Well, you could have almost guessed when they started jumbling the money and divvying it up by hours, that was a huge red flag. And you just don't do that. I'm sorry. You don't do it, or you structure it. You talk with FinCom, you get everybody in the room, you structure it somehow. Because the reality is, we tried to make it so that the treasurer and the treasurer collector's position had a salary that was worth something.
Yeah.
That was benchmarked. You did the work on that. We kind of tried to bring it up over time to make it work. and that was done. And then they kind of shook that money around and made it more nebulous.
Yeah, and I didn't even do the work on that. I may have done a little bit, but most of that was Marie and Sharon.
Right.
Sharon was an old treasure collector in between Andrea and Rod, and I mean she did great. And
she was great.
You know, even after she left, she was helping, and
right.
You know, I think they all worked together to get all the comps, which was needed, and we got a fair salary for a treasure collector, for a good salary for a treasure collector for a town our size.
Right. Now,
but
I mean, times change. The workload goes up. We know it goes up. We know the government's going to ask you to do more. You know that there's going to be a lot more dotting of I's and crossing of T's in a department. That's going to happen. We get that. They should have foreseen being able to do it. They're not new to the job. They work just in the next town over. They knew the size of Brimfield. They've been here for 9 months. They should have said, you know what? There's no way we can do this under the circumstances. We need to regroup. And they could have done it almost close to the fiscal year. You know, at least as early into the fiscal year as possible. Not that you can't do anything with the numbers once they're done, but you can at least be aware of it. And if it's not a foreseen deficit spending and it's a problem, then you probably could have fixed it. Right. With a transfer or with some sort of cash reserve or whatever. You could have set it up so that they could have funded that line item. It just wasn't done right. And you would think that somebody in Treasury I should have been able to do that. Anyway.
Yeah. So I guess the other last part of that would be I got two concerns. And the first one is I just forgot the first one.
There you go.
Second one is
one concern. It's like a comedy sketch.
Yeah.
It's like Moses coming down with the 15 tablets in Mel Brooks movie. These 10 commandments.
So the first one is I would like to, look into, and I don't think it's possible, some sort of repayment. I mean, if the verbal contract was for 32 hours, and I think it's not possible because one is a salaried employee, you can work the hours and get paid however you want. Two, I don't think the town can do it because honestly, he has signatures from the select board, his overseeing body, for the past 9 months.
Pay periods.
Yeah, 9 months saying.
So that's 18 pay periods.
Yeah.
Right. 18 warrants.
Yeah.
About, give or take.
And they signed off saying it looks good.
Yeah.
So I don't think I don't think they will go after him because that's going to.
No, they can't.
Come back to bite them.
Yeah, I don't think they could anyways, to be honest, but.
Yeah, and then my second point.
Oh, he thought it.
I did. Oh yeah. It's been a long week.
You can go below, but we got to get a case of it here. Stat. Let's work on that.
So yeah, it is. Because of the way that he left, it was a resignation under less than ideal situations.
Right.
Now, if you look back to a month after we were no longer select board members, they wanted to do an IT audit because I had access to emails that are public emails.
Right.
This gentleman who resigned after, a sticky situation, I would hope they're going to do a fiscal audit.
Right. Well, they also got to get keys, change the locks, do all the things that they did for everybody else.
He is one of 2 or 3 people in town that have signatory capabilities on the town.
Bonding, right.
Checkbooks.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that have to be fixed.
And that's where the audit.
This is HR. Yeah, this is HR's got to get in there and do their due diligence. They've got, if they're worried about, the computers. I don't even, the computers are another thing. The passwords and all that. Those laptops had to have gone somewhere. Somebody's got a laptop, and maybe they do.
At last night's FinCom meeting, the accountant is asking for $500 to buy a chair and some lights and stuff like that for the office upstairs.
Mm-hmm.
And she doesn't want to buy a computer because there's a computer there. She hasn't turned it on yet, but it's going to be some computer that's there. I don't think it's one of the laptops.
So it's probably an older one.
Yeah. So what happened to the accountants? She should have been one
should have a
of the
laptop.
2528 that they purchased, and
Right.
it didn't appear that she had one.
So anybody over at the annex, could you give us a list of the 28 laptops that were bought, and where they are, who has them, and kind of what capability, what department, and whatnot? Because we need to know. I mean, I think that's something that we really need to know. And I would ask the select board to get that information out there, because I think it needs to be done.
Yep.
All right. So that was that.
Yes.
I don't think really I'll get the agenda up here real quick.
Yeah. So one of the early questions was they see that it's updated, but they didn't see any changes. And of course, it's not redlined or anything
Yeah.
else like has been suggested here in the past.
Yeah.
What was added was on this. I don't know if this one has it, but there's one
this
update
one does.
for the highway going over budget on their winter.
This one doesn't.
Okay.
Oh yeah, it does. Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
No, it's deficit of winter. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's on there.
So that was the update that was noted there, but then at the meeting itself, once you got there physically,
There you go.
the chief of police was handing out further updated agenda,
Oh.
which just cracks me up. You've got the chief of police there to
Yeah.
calm the
handing out
crazy
flyers.
people. Yeah, and making sure that everyone had the most updated agenda.
That's awesome.
Yeah, good use of time.
So you can see there's the highway department was a notice of deficit in winter snow wages, and even though we were talking about this the other day, even though we weren't inundated with a lot of snow, we did have a lot of ice. We did have a lot of times that needed to be treated with
Right.
the liquid de-icer to kind of be ahead of it. And I don't want to speak for Zach because obviously, but I'm assuming it's that. I mean, I don't think they highball that budget item. I think they kind of
Yeah. So
use an average.
as a previous member of FinCom, we have always, and actually this was discussed last night at the FinCom meeting, but the going thought was always that the folklore in mass finances was that if there was a late season blizzard or any season blizzard, if a town went into deficit, they would be more likely to get funds from the state, for that state of emergency.
Gotcha.
And once the state of emergency is called, then it does open up funding sources for municipalities.
That makes sense.
That is total folklore, and if it's a statewide state of emergency, every town will get
Okay.
their
So it's a bull-faced lie.
yes.
Okay.
So what FinCom and Highway Zach did last night was agree to start making that more realistic. And I think they're going to do it over 3 years. So every year for the next 3, you're going to see big jumps in the
budget.
in the
That line
budget
item
for
budget.
winter snow, which it really doesn't matter much. It's the only. I think it's the only, but it's if it's not, it's one of very few line items that can be run in the red.
Right. And it's often run in the red after a bad winter.
Right.
I mean, at least it historically always has. And it will be funded. And so it's
And
not
that-
like it's being ignored.
And that is a good use of the reserve fund transfer.
Right.
Zach will go in and say, it was unforeseen that we would have 17 snowstorms this year.
Right.
So
Yeah.
over
that
the
makes
next
sense.
3 years, they're going to make it more realistic. So hopefully they won't hit the reserve fund as frequently with it
Right.
or as deep. It is now in the red. Zach was saying that he had one of his part-time snow plowers actually get overtime this week because there were so many hours.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to use this opportunity,
Oh, okay.
if I may.
to do
We're we're going to institute a Brimfield Matters happy hour at the end,
Oh, good.
where we talk about nice happy things. But since we're talking about Zach, and all his time and all that, I figure I'll do the plug now, and maybe I'll do it again at the end.
Yeah.
But here Zach was, because it was FinCom and he had been put on the agenda. He wanted to be on the agenda to discuss his budget.
Mm-hmm.
If you saw him and if you know him, he looked dead. I mean,
right.
He had been out plowing since 10 o'clock the previous morning, nonstop, and so it was probably 36, 40 hours of nonstop plowing and getting ready and clean up and all that stuff.
Right.
And and at the end of it, instead of going home and going to bed,
right,
he came to FinCom to talk about his budget.
Right.
That's the type of dedicated employee we have, and that everyone should be so grateful for.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you have to be aware too. Like, that's the same crew that's cutting up those trees that are coming across of East Hill Road, Lyman Barnes, wherever.
The gypsy moth.
I mean, they're the ones that. A lot of people have been losing power just with trees coming down, even when they haven't been these huge snowstorms.
Yeah.
These guys are out there working still, and they deserve just that little word of praise, or even stay safe for the next one, that kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
That's what they certainly deserve that.
Yep.
So, all right, very good. So do we? The rest of it, you want to talk? I mean, the rest of the agenda's fairly.
So the one that
liquor license.
The one thing that was mentioned, Mr. Miller was asking about, was the building committee, and the building committee had requested an open house.
And that was on the revision that was passed out that
Yes.
evening. That's not on the revision that I was able to get
right
online.
Now that revisions happen, before on the web and then on site and and I shouldn't say just on site. They are all posted correctly
at the annex. As far as I know.
Yeah.
I mean, I would think they are.
Yeah. I would. Yeah. That's what they say, and I believe them.
I would believe that. Yeah.
So. It's all posted correctly. It's just not on the web anymore for us all the time, but sometimes it is. So, so the last one was the building committee wanted to have an open house at public safety, and kind of tout what they did and how successful they were, and which again, another group of residents who just worked their tails off for 12 years, some of them.
Yeah, right.
And that's not an exaggeration. I believe Mike Wales has been on building committees for the past 12 years.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there are others as well.
Yeah.
But, and they wanted to, after being taken away so brutally, they wanted to, have some sort of party about their success, which was a great success. So at the meeting, they discussed it, and they wanted $500 for a mailing that could go out to invite everybody to see it. And, of course, the select board had to put their fingerprints on it.
Mm-hmm.
And they chose to change the time and not give them any money. So... And only social media could be used, which is good, but it's not going to reach everyone. And it's something
that's ridiculous. I didn't hear that. Actually, I did not hear that. That only social media, as far as getting the word out, will post it on their own website, on the town's website.
I don't know if they said they would post it on the town's website or not. But and the time it didn't work for some of the
A-frame. What about the A-frame sign on the common?
Hey, we could do that. They did say the light up sign.
Okay.
They would request to get on the light up sign.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good. Well, that's something.
So, and some of the selectmen couldn't make it, so they wanted to change the time from the morning to the afternoon, which begs the question, why do they have to be there? One, they weren't selectmen when it happened.
Right.
And two, when they were selectmen,
right,
they got rid of the building committee. So why should they help celebrate the success of the we were both on the board.
It might be kind of awkward.
Yeah,
actually,
we were both on the boards, and I would suggest that no selectman should be front and center, past or present.
I think it's a shame, just because of the way it all unrolled. The reality is, the board should be there. They should be praising them and shaking their hands and all that. But it's like praising someone you just kind of kicked out of your house. It's like, well, why do I want you to shake my hand? Why do I want to get a picture with you? But I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, and then the other thing that they added to it, which kind of answers this question, it was the old building committee that asked for the open house, but the select board also wanted to make sure that the new building committee was there, and there would be kind of a handing off of the torch,
which is interesting.
Which
I guess they need
slap in the face.
Yeah. They need to also augment that second board, right? I mean, they went from 6 to, what are they now? 3 or 2?
No,
3.
They went from 6 to 4.
6 to 4.
So
there's Teresa and
Teresa and Steve Pfeiffer left. So now there's.
Did they have all Egan. 6 filled? They did.
Yeah,
that's right. They did.
Mike Egan is the chair. Tim Schnetzer is the vice.
Yep.
Clea Ververitis is the secretary, and Deb Fagerstrom is the. Is the admin.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, okay.
And she also has voting powers, privileges.
Excellent. All right. So, do you know when that is?
So it's now kind of up in the air. I don't know exactly what's going to happen. These additional slaps in the face of needing the select board there that got rid of them, needing the new building committee to I don't know how they expect to hand the torch. I don't know who's.
It's not
which of the old committee is going to hand the torch to them nicely and not, after their.
Right.
Oh, Mr. Miller says yes. What is yes?
I'm not sure what that.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll see.
So we'll see. Mr. Miller, Mike Miller, was the former co-chair who did an excellent job as co-chair. He and Chief Kuss, and the whole board. I mean, it did great. Mike was co-chair partly because he had a lot of experience in the past with. He was on the Tantasco Building Committee,
right? And
Chief Kuss was on the Munson Town Hall Building Committee,
right?
So we had some really knowledgeable people who understood the municipal building processes.
Yeah.
And okay, he's answering to someone else.
Oh, I see.
Yes. So with Deb being a voting member, doesn't that go against why they voted? Why they wanted to disband the current
department
committee?
Heads.
Yeah, she's a department head.
Yeah.
I don't really know why.
I think the way they're gonna get around is that she has no employee.
But she does.
And
that's how they did get over it.
So it needs to be maybe brought up at some point. I don't know where, but maybe town meeting. Could ask what it's about. It'll be interesting how they spin it. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it will be real interesting to see. There was supposed to be a meeting tonight. Actually, they were supposed to do the first day of every month. Or the first Wednesday of every month, I believe, was their scheduled meetings.
For the building committee?
Yeah.
2.0? Mm-hmm.
Yep. And it was canceled before an agenda went out.
Right.
So I think they're probably waffling a little or flailing a little bit with.
Right. Well, I mean, they need to get going because they need to have a plan. Like you said, if some of these infrastructure grants come in, this is the time of year they start coming in from here to the next fiscal year. You start hearing about things. They need to get some ducks in a row so that at least they can say, all right, we're looking into this, we're looking into that. In case something comes up, they can act on it. At least stall and just say, okay, we're in the middle of something, but we're not there yet, but we can get it done by then. But it's going to take a lot of work just to get down to what do we have. I don't really get it.
Really, I mean, the way that they got rid of the old building committee, who had so much institutional knowledge and did such a great job for the town, and the town, I think, in large part, trusted them.
Yeah.
Obviously not everybody.
No.
But but I think the majority of the town respected what happened with the public safety complex, and would have gone along with what was said, with the next building project.
Right. I think they already had kind of a tentative plan of what they needed, what the town wanted just from surveys at the time. And so it was just going to be, well, let's get this new iteration of what we have, mold it, see if we can package it up and get it to the next town meeting. If not this town meeting, at least get an idea of how much do you want to spend, how much can we spend, and just try to get the temperature of the room.
Yeah. And I think it's going to be really tough to have that same credibility at town meeting. I think, having the knowledge of everything. I'm not even sure this new committee is going to last much more than a month.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'd be surprised.
Agree.
So
the rest of that agenda was just appointments and licensing. It was just kind of just getting through it.
Right.
What was one of the reasons that they were that they had such a short meeting?
So yes, the other added agenda item that came up with the hand delivered agenda was that they were going to appoint George Adams as the able to speak for the board.
The liaison representative?
Yes.
What do you want to call it? I don't know.
For the ambulance contract. And it was interesting because the ambulance meeting, which was supposed to be a tri-town, tri-select board meeting.
What that means is that Holland, Wales, and Brimfield, who share percentages of this ambulance contract that was negotiated a few years back, they're all integral players in this contract. And so each one of the select boards was going to meet.
Right, together, and potentially make some decisions that they would have to vote on. And by the way, I like how you say, what that means. If you could, for next time, learn sign language, so as I'm speaking, you can sign it.
I will. I got a few sign languages for you, but you might, because you gotta. I mean, I thought it would be good to explain where this all came from, because there's a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot involved behind the scenes on that, the discussion and the negotiations and how that came about. There's a lot of data that has to come out, and there's a lot of awareness that you need to bring to the table so that you can understand who's talking about so that you can understand Wales' point of view, you can understand Holland's point of view, and they can understand Brimfield's point of view. And you need to understand it.
Yeah. And it's one of those things, again, and I guess I'm also going to stop here just a second and just say, I don't like, and I don't think you like, talking bad about town as much as we have to do. And I wish there was more happy hour on this. But, the sad fact is there's so much that's going on that shouldn't.
Right.
It's and people need to know. Hopefully, everybody feels more educated about their town after these meetings.
Right.
And I don't want it to be a slugfest every time.
Right.
But I hope something positive happens. So going back, I don't know if you have anything there, but
no. I think this you try to point out some of the things that are going well, and it honestly it's hard to find. So what we're going to try to train ourselves is not to go hard on the things that are going bad, but just to point them out. I think it is important to be factual about it. I think it is important to know that this contract that was negotiated a few years ago with the ambulance service was put together with a lot of hours and hard work, and to not be ready to get to that table again and find out, because if you get screwed, you're not going to get screwed, I guess, at the table, but it could work against you.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? You don't always get your voice heard, and so you do need to be a little bit aware of what's going on so that we don't get bitten.
So to show you some history, for you to get some history, this meeting took place where the select board said, George, you can speak for us. We don't need to go. Right. Well, according to, some people that were at the meeting, I have become friends with, select board members from the other towns because of the first round of this meeting, and I believe you have too.
Yeah. I mean, there were a lot of people. There were probably 15 people in the room when this all started to being discussed. And, and it went through a lot of permutations and discussion. All over the place. So you get very familiar with the chiefs, with the local select board, with basically
finance committees.
The finance committees with it. I mean, anybody that had something to do with it, whether it be financial or first responders or whatnot, they were all there. And so it was a tough series of meetings. I have to admit, it worked out well, really well, I think, because everybody worked together and everybody put the hands on the cards on the table and said, all right, this is what we're dealing with. We got to fix it, and it got fixed. And so right now they're going through some really tough changes from Action and the ambulance service, and they're going to come to the table with some ideas, and you need to be able to discuss them with some sort of credibility.
But it was something that Holland and Wales showed up again with their full board and their finance committees and their chiefs, fire chiefs.
Right.
And Brimfield showed up with two members. Two of them showed up. Miss George and Anthony, both showed up, and Chief Contours was there.
Right. Now, they couldn't show up more than two, though.
Because they didn't post it.
Right.
Yeah, and I want to say that this was discussed at a meeting a couple months ago. And it was on everybody else's books, and they had forgotten, I believe. They couldn't show up.
They couldn't post it and show up with a quorum. Basically, is what
because it would be an open meeting violation, because they'd all have to go and discuss a town item, the ambulance service.
Right.
So, but it was very unfortunate because everybody else was prepared, and a lot of the people that were there when we went, are still there.
Right.
With the turnover that we've had, there isn't anybody.
Right.
I believe Mr. Adams and definitely Mr. Soto, at the beginning of their term, 9 months ago.
Right.
I didn't even know we didn't have a full-time fire department.
Right.
And now they're in discussing the ambulance contract
and how it relates to the fire and police. Right. Yeah, I agree. It's going to take. It takes a lot of reading, and it takes a lot of discussion just to get up to date and up to snuff. I mean, it could be hard.
When we went through the first time, I was on FinCom, and I started going with you on select board.
Right.
And that was actually the first time I think I laid eyes on you.
Well, there you go. It may have been. And I was like, quirky FinCom person, stay away. But no, you're probably right. That's probably when we first met. I think, other than the FinCom meetings where everybody was just in a group. But that one, everybody was partaking and being part of the conversation for sure.
Yeah.
I learned a lot.
Yeah.
In that year.
And that was really good because it was, everybody participated.
Right.
And everybody was caring about it and tried their hardest to make something work. And it was a tough, I say that, changing the Brimfield ambulance service, stopping that basically was, I think, the toughest thing that I had to do as a select board member.
Yeah. It was one of the more, it was like an onion. I mean, you know what I mean? It was like, okay, here's the situation. No, here's the situation. No, here's the situation. And the more you investigated it, the more things needed to be ironed out and fixed and talked and communicated. And I think it was just because everybody really, really worked together on that one. And understood it.
Yeah.
Really understood it. Like, I don't think... And I don't even blame the two selectmen that went to the meeting. They went in there. Like, there's no way they hit with all four cylinders, all 8 cylinders right there. I think they were probably like, okay, what is going on?
Yeah.
What are these numbers? And then And I just hope you don't start asking rudimentary questions that would everybody already knows, and that just slows down.
You don't want to retard the process.
You want to jump, and just say, here's the deal. This is what we're dealing with right now. These are the changes we got to make or deal with.
And this goes back to probably our biggest and most frequent complaint of how they treat the employees and how they treat the residents.
Right.
If they were polite and reasonable and just spoke as friends, as associates to everybody that was involved, which included the police chief as well, and I mean, all these people are involved. I would have no problem talking to them. I might, just because of how they have treated me and my friends and associates, but I could care less if you beat me, or if anything, if you can treat us with respect, if you let us talk during meetings where we have information, there's information to be learned, and that's required to do this job.
Right. I mean, nuts and bolts about it. There shouldn't be a meeting where you go, oh God, I got to be at another meeting, a meeting that I have no idea what it's about.
Right.
Other than they did have that executive session. So they did talk a little bit about it. That was probably their exposure to one that went awry in September 12th.
Right.
So they may have learned a good bit then, I suppose, to kind of get them at least asking the right questions. And so maybe they did get more information.
Yeah.
But still.
And I do
this should
think
have been a second thought meeting. This should have been we can't have, we got to be there meeting.
It is the largest or second largest line item we have, other than salaries.
Mm-hmm.
It's either ambulance and trash, or trash and ambulance. I forget
they're
which.
really close.
So
what it was per head.
And I think this one will be easier, because it has been worked out, and there isn't any gut-wrenching decision of do we stop the 40-year institution that was the Brimfield Ambulance Service.
The logic, right. The logic is that you take the contract that was there and you bring it up to date, rather than rewrite the whole thing.
Right. So, a good question just was asked about what happened with the request for more money for the Board of Selectmen members.
Oh, I forgot. Let me put that up there. Yeah. And so...
Again, that was one that I truly feel was only put on to make Mr. Soto look bad.
Yeah.
That doesn't have any legs whatsoever.
No.
And I think he understood that, and when that came up, and of course, Marty did what Marty does best and says, here's a ridiculous request by Paul McCarthy.
Ugh.
So but it was Anthony Soto.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody could have. If somebody could have gone to Mr. Soto and just said, you know what, put it on there because you want to emphasize the need to get benchmarks for the whole thing, and you weren't really looking to get 5,000, each or 5,000 increase for the group, but you just wanted to understand where salaries come from, and maybe it was to jumpstart the benchmark work. Then maybe he could have spun it in that direction. Like, we just need to start looking at this. Where is that money? Because we have a grant. They have a grant for benchmarking. And so I don't know where that is, but that would have been a good segue right into that discussion. If, yeah.
So what ended up happening was, after Marty,
chastised them.
Didn't chastise him. He just said, read it, and he didn't say ridiculous item, but, he just made sure that everyone knew that it was Anthony Soto's request.
Yeah.
Anthony then said, I want to table this.
Right. Well, the other thing, too, is the chair or chairs over the last 18 months or whatever have not put agenda items on that would have been far more pertinent and to the point and timely in the past.
Right.
And what they should have done is said, no, Anthony, this isn't going on. Did you just not hear what happened with the treasurer? Did you just not hear what, the DPW's in deficit and we have to restructure that? Did you not just hear about, the police is kind of in flux. We don't know what we're going to have to do to hire more people and keep more people. We don't know. We don't know what the budgets are. We don't even know anybody's budget for next year.
Yeah,
they haven't discussed not one budget has come before this board. I take that back. Maybe town clerk hinted at needing something, but not a whole budget from what I gathered. So,
here's my favorite one. Before we go too far, do you realize? I'm going to say, do you realize that the average meeting that we have every other week has gone from 2.5 hours down to 12 minutes?
Yeah, right.
And now you want 200% raise?
You know what they could do is give each one of them a laptop, and then they could do it by Zoom if they wanted to, if they allowed it. But at least you could record it, and then you wouldn't have to worry about all the added expense for IT, for the for the cameras that they're supposed to be putting in. So the chair should have said, "I'm not putting that on the agenda." And then he should have just explained why, and it should have never gotten on the agenda. This was a very pedantic way of attacking somebody with a passive-aggressive approach. I put it on the agenda because you wanted me to, and then you got mad at me for doing that, and now you're mad at me for pointing out that it was a dumb thing to put on. So I'm sorry, it is wrong. The chair dropped the ball again. That's it.
Does he know where the ball is at this point?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I think you're exactly right. They used it. They used it exactly the way they wanted to use it. For some reason, they've got something against Mr. Soto for sure.
Yeah.
And maybe some of it, I don't know what's justified or not, to be honest. But they definitely have, I think that was definitely out for that.
Yeah. So I think that just about covers it.
It does.
Right?
It does.
What did we say we were going to cover? Did we cover everything?
The three things I think you mentioned. We were going to talk about the DPW. We were going to talk about the ambulance. We were going to talk about treasurer. I think we did.
Treasurer.
Did all that.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we're good. So now we're going to start, I think, the happy hour with Brimfield Matters.
All right. So one thing that we want to say is Eva. Again, I don't know if you could sing her praises any higher as far as what she does.
Oh, I thought you were going to say
No, I wasn't going to do that. I'll put that up in a minute. But I know she... No, the only thing I'm going to ask her is if she could send it as a JPEG, a picture, rather than a Word document, because it goes into the format. But I can do that. It's not a big deal. He's
about to praise her.
But then I'm asking her for a favor.
Yeah, can you do something else for me?
You got time.
Can you make it easier for me?
Just make it easier for me. No, that's it. No, it's working out fine. She's a little wordy on some of the blurs she has, and we'll go over that. But let me say that she wanted us to repeat that there are ARPA funds. No, it's funny because we made fun. Anyway, ARPA funds for people that are in need, especially this time of year, for heating and fuel assistance. And so those...
I don't even want to look at this text.
Is she supposed to get those to her? Contact her at that?
Yes.
So she worked hard on getting a certain amount of money from the ARPA funds to offset some people's dire needs. And so if anybody knows somebody or you yourself are in a pickle as far as fuel and needing some assistance during this time of year, especially, it's tough, especially since winter seems to be coming back. So call her. She's over at the senior center. Reach out, and she's got some funding that could help a lot of people in residents in town. And
the assistance is, the town doesn't have the bandwidth. Even Super Eva doesn't have the bandwidth to look at everybody's finances. So they're going with if you qualified for fuel assistance from the state, you'll qualify for the town.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, if you don't qualify for that, there's nothing that the town could do at this point.
Okay, they're using that criteria.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I believe it's $500 per participant.
Okay.
So yeah, give Eva a call and
Yeah, just talk it out with her, and she'll do whatever she can. There's no doubt.
So actually, we can put the next screen on.
Oh yeah, sure.
That's very wordy and not the right format.
No, it was perfect. It was perfect. It always gets smaller at the bottom too, and I always got to kind of reach up forward and read it. But on March 24th, there's a St. Patrick's Day celebration party, 11 to 1. Again, for the wearing of the green and celebrating the Irish, and there's going to be a lot of comfort food. So she says she's pleased to welcome back Tim Van Egmond with his Irish show, Shamrocks and Leprechauns. The menu's crackers and pub cheese spread.
Speak with her.
I can, don't you know? Yes. Oh, yes. Potato and leek soup, Ava's fabulous Irish tavern shepherd's pie, and cake and mint chip ice cream. There's an option for macaroni and cheese with broccoli for those observing Lent. And there is a request for $5 suggested donation, just suggested as a donation for the party. Please register prior to March 20th. And there's a phone number, it's 245-7253.
Nice.
All right, then.
So I will say once again, I have volunteered at numerous of these celebrations, and one, the food is amazing, and Eva cooks it all herself. This is part of the happy hour, and the accolades that we can give all of our town employees. Eva is certainly one who goes above and beyond every day of every week of every year. I mean, she's probably going out now and starting to prepare for this, getting the crackers, getting the cheese. She doesn't, just behind the scenes. She doesn't charge for going grocery shopping. She does, the hours that she puts in that, are just pro bono because she loves the town and loves the residents is just insane. And that goes again to Zach as well. Like, 36 hours. He was up for 36 hours, to go to a FinCom meeting. He works 40 hours a week, and he'll be there tomorrow. He was there today, He's all these guys put in so many more hours than they should to just make this town as great as it is. So thank you, Eva. Thank you, Zach. What else? Do you have any other?
No, I think those are the two blurbs that she sent me. If she sent me something this afternoon in an email, honestly, my afternoon was kind of cluttered, so I'll apologize. We'll get that out next time. So we'll try to do it next week. Let me think. I think next week is going to be Thursday. So we're going to try to do Thursday night next week, I think, at 6:30. That should be fine. And I think that is all we had. Do you have anything else?
No, so just the one last thing. The senior center lunch is for seniors. I believe it's 60 or older, but they never check IDs. I'm certainly not 60. I'm young and spry.
Yeah.
So when I go in, I have to work, but
you could slot potato sauce and potatoes and coleslaw and stuff.
Yep. Yes. It's definitely worth it. If people are new, call up, get your reservation soon.
Yep. All right. Very good. Then I do believe we'll see everybody next week. And we'll do that. And all right. So we'll see you guys later.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye now.